If you're sick of the mainstream sports outlets, well, so was I. So I started my own show. I'm Shane Larson, and this is the Game Time Guru. It's different than other talk shows. I'm providing a panoramic view on sports so you can see them through a different lens. So buckle up and let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome out to the Game Time Guru podcast. Once again, I am your host, Shane Larson. Excited to be here with you guys today. Hey, guys, listen up. Before we get started, make sure you remember this podcast is being brought to you by Audible. Make sure, if you like reading books, but you just prefer to listen to them rather than actually reading a physical book, go get your Audible 30-day free trial using my link. I'll put it in the description, but also remember, if you just want to type it in, it's audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. And the reason I say that is because, guys, we're in a time right now where a lot of you guys are having a little bit more time to spend at home, trying to figure out what to do with your free time. What better way to educate yourselves by reading books? I'm currently finishing up, finally, the book It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad, who happens to be Russell Wilson's strategic advisor. Unbelievable book, teaching you how to think neutrally and teaching athletes how to think neutrally as well. So if you guys want to check that book out, audibletrial.com/thegametimeguru. And make sure, if you have not done so already, that you are subscribed to the podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms and give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That'd be extremely helpful. Now, we got all the business stuff out of the way. Now we're getting to the fun stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome onto the show Mr. Ken Childs. He is the owner of slidingonice.com. Slidingonice.com, we'll put that in the description as well. And we're going to get to know Ken and what he does in the sports world. So, Ken, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, we're excited to have you on here. It's a little bit of a unique discussion because that's kind of the whole point of the Game Time Guru podcast. We just really want to bring on people from all walks of life, all angles on sports. We're trying to get people all around to share their stories. So before we get into kind of what you do with slidingonice.com, what brought you to that point, let's kind of get to know your background in sports. Ken, what's your background in sports, whether you competed in sports or you've been around them your whole life? Kind of give us a little breakdown there.
Sure. So, like most people, I played sports as a kid growing up. Ended up going to North Carolina Wesleyan College to play baseball. Managed to make the team and then promptly get injured, and that was that. So that was ended up playing club lacrosse in college. Played club lacrosse out of college for a little bit. Broke my elbow playing lacrosse, so that was kind of the end of my club years doing that. Sat around for a while after that. Got good and fat, like we all do. And about 2005, 2006, got involved in with a motorsports website that's now defunct, and kind of started writing and doing photography for them, and did that for a while. And in 2010, 2011, decided to start a website on bobsledding, skeleton and luge, and it's kind of taken off, and it's been a really, really fun ride.
Okay, I want to touch base on a couple of those things you just said. One, you have a background in sports and went through some injuries. That always is frustrating, but it's cool to see that you're, still in the sports world in some form or fashion. You mentioned you started writing and doing photography. When did you get into the write? Have you always been into journalism in that sense? Did you go to school?
Oh, no, I was a business major in college, business and computers. So I double majored in that. Had a minor in history. Did well in my English classes, but never really had a set journalism thing. I used to post on the message board of a website, and the local racing community in the area had one website that kind of did stuff in this region. And long story short, they were looking for people, and I had some downtime. I'm like, yeah, I'll try to help out where I can. And they found out I was pretty decent at taking pictures, and so they're like, hey, there's this event at Martinsville Speedway. It's now it's the Valley Star Credit Union 300, which is it's the biggest race of late model stock racing, which is kind of the top tier of local racing in the area. So you've got your local racetrack in your area. Living in North Carolina, we've got a few.
Right.
Anyway, long story short, they asked me to go out there, and I started doing some pictures on their test day, and the website liked my work, and I ended up working with them for the better part of 6-7 years or so, at least, going to about 60 races a year. Because there's a race every week somewhere. Usually there's a race on Friday and a race on Saturday in this region. So I go to 2 races a weekend, probably 60 races a year. Traveled about 25,000 miles a year just doing that. And that just kind of went along. The website kind of went their own way. I kind of left that, and having doing a lot of the work at Martinsville Speedway for the website over the years, they got to know me and got to know that I was still wanted to stay involved in the sport. And they asked me to kind of stay on to take pictures, do interviews and stuff like that. And I've been doing that ever since. So I've been doing the track photography for Martinsville Speedway, and I've been the PA announcer at South Boston Speedway for the last 4 years now as well. Just same kind of deal. Tracks are always looking for help. And one thing led to another, and I got involved in that from working with the website. They needed to fill an announcer one time, and what I found at the more local level of sports is if you just go, hell, I'll give it a try. That gets you in a lot of the time, like an absurd amount of times. Just, hey, I'll give it a whirl and see what happens. And if you suck at it, you suck at it. If you're any good at it, you can maybe turn it into something.
I dig that story, man. That's really, really cool. Wow. Okay. So explain this to us. Did you have a background in motorsports before you had kind of taken that dive into that realm, or were you kind of learning along the way?
Oh, I mean, I've always, since I was a little kid, I always watched racing. I grew up in Western Massachusetts. We had a little short track up there at Riverside Park, which is now a Six Flags. The racetrack is right where the Superman, the ride is now. But the local track ran there all the time growing up, so my parents would take me to the races there. We'd go down to Stafford Speedway once in a while, just south of there in Connecticut. Stafford's still running today. But yeah, I was always interested, was a huge Richard Petty fan growing up. And, when I went to Wesleyan down here in Rocky Mount, I'm in North Carolina, there's motorsports everywhere.
Right.
And so it was an easy way to get involved in that. And so I'd go to my local racetracks around here, and that's how I learned about the website. That was kind of, at the time, it was really the only website covering local racing in the region. That has since blown up. There's 5 or 6 now around here now, but at the time it was the only one that was providing race day updates, the only one providing like lots of pictures of events and stuff. And so I used to write on their message board, and that's when they kind of found me. And it kind of bloomed from there, but I never really, growing up, never like thought to myself, one day I'm going to be involved in the sport. That just seemed completely out there as something that I could do. And I vividly remember walking into Martinsville Speedway the first day for that test. And, I still have my tickets over in Turn 1. I let a friend of mine use them now, but I still have I go to races there all the time before I got involved in working with the, website and everything. So I have tickets. I still have them. And so I walked into the infield and I look around and I'm like, holy crap, I am here inside the track where Martinsville is one of the oldest tracks on the circuit. So it's like, this is amazing. Here I am, and I get to do this at least once. And to this day, even now working for the track, every event I go to, there's a point where it just kind of hits me and I'm like, my God, I get to be here and take pictures and talk with all these famous drivers and just and I've made so many great friends over the years doing this kind of thing. Some of my best friends I've made from either motorsports or bobsled or whatever. So it's nothing I imagined would happen. I've just always been really interested in the sport, and that's kind of how it came to be.
I am so intrigued by that. It's super cool hearing that story. Now, and as you're talking, Ken, it reminds me of a time when I spoke with, at the time, ESPN analyst Adnan Virk. Now, he works for DAZN now, and he's on his own thing. But at the time, he was at ESPN. He was on my show, and he was talking about one of the things he actually told aspiring journalists was to educate yourselves in sports that aren't so mainstream, right? So educate yourselves in the sports that aren't as popular. Maybe you don't know too much about them, but educate yourselves because those will provide opportunities.
Yep.
And just hearing you kind of talk about that, now we're going to get into your experience with the bobsledding stuff. It kind of rings true. Now it's funny, it goes back full circle. We're talking a year, 2 years ago, I talked to Adnan, and now I'm talking to somebody who kind of went the route that he was doing without even talking to him about it. It's kind of cool to see it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm right there with you. I love those, when you do something like that, you take you never know what's going to come of it, but you still can build relationships, and so many cool experiences can come from it. So it's cool to see that even on that part of of the sports world, the relationships and the experiences you have been able to experience and have are incredible. And that's awesome because you decided you were going to do something and you may not have known everything about it, but you learned along the way. Now you've got all
Right.
these cool connections. Now, slidingonice.com. So the website for the motorsport stuff, it went away. You said it was done, but you're still kind of connected in that sport, but then you wanted to go the bobsled route. My question is, when you say
Why?
bobsled,
Yeah.
what got you there? Like, that's not a very popular sport amongst everybody. I guess it's really popular.
It should be. We'll start there. It definitely should be.
Why is that?
Well, the sport's amazing. The people are amazing. The sport's amazing. It's got all the bobsled, skeleton, and luge has all the speed you want. It's got athleticism. It's got everything. It really does. And I learned that I was 9 years old. I'm 40 now. I turned 41 in June. And I was 9 years old during the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. And I ended up watching that like the whole time, start to finish. It was during part of it was during my winter break. But there's a winter break in West, or at least there was, God, 30 years ago. My God, I'm old. 30 years ago when we had like a winter break in February and then a spring break a little later on. And during the winter break, I watched the Olympics and then I got sick. So I basically like stayed home for another 4 or 5 days. I watched 2 straight weeks of the Olympics and I was in bed and I remember watching bobsled, watching luge and thinking to myself, well, man, this is cool. Those things go really fast, kind of like race cars, right?
Right.
And that's sort of where I got hooked. And so, Wide World of Sports would come on, and during the winter time, they'd show the races either from Lake Placid or from, wherever at the time. And I'd be hooked. And then as I got a little older, the now defunct Speed Channel used to show them because they had no content for the winter time. So they'd show bobsled, skeleton, whatever on there. And I kept watching and thought, man, this is awesome. And then one fateful day, I was still working for the motorsports website, on the side. And I thought to myself, man, I'm going to go look up some more of this information. And there wasn't a whole lot. Like, I just wanted to find like schedules and stuff like that because I know they race in Lake Placid. When did they race in Lake Placid? Couldn't find it. And that's the moment where I thought to myself, all right, the hell with it. I'll do it myself. And put out some contacts. At the time, Jeffrey Bodine had his Bodine Bobsled Project, which is kind of the little intermeshing between NASCAR and bobsled. And so I was like, hey, look, I contacted some PR folks with the U.S. Federation or the Canadian Federation and said, hey, I've got this idea for a website I want to start doing. Could you please get me on whatever mailing list you have, things like that. Bought the domain. And just tried coming up with ideas. And I look back now, I've been doing it a decade now. And I look back when I first started and it was a great idea. And I had like a couple of ideas of stuff I wanted to do. And now it's just become so much more with everything I do with it. But really at the time, it was just a matter of, wow, this looks cool. I would like to know more information about it. Oh, well, there isn't any. I'll find it all and just put it out there for everybody else. And that's, fast forward 2018, I was in Pyeongchang for the Olympics. Very similar to the Martinsville thing, looking around going, good God almighty, what am I doing here? And yeah, and that's just kind of how it came to be. And there's not a lot of people that write about the sports in the country on purpose. There's a great writer down in Miami, Tim Reynolds, writes for the AP, and he does a lot of work with the sports in the wintertime as well. But that's about it in the United States. So I've kind of, again, found my niche.
I like that, man. I think it's super cool. Not sure what you guys have for I've looked at slidingonice.com. I've got it open right here. I'm literally taking a look at it. What about podcasting or stuff like that? Do you guys have anything like that connected with your podcast, Ken?
Not really. I thought about doing like a podcast or whatever, but as your listeners will find, I get sick of listening to myself. I can't, and in my head, I'm like, I can't imagine people doing this once a week, once a month, whatever. So for now, I've stuck to the writing part of it. And the tour comes through Lake Placid once a year. My first year doing this, World Championships happened to be in Lake Placid. So that's 2 weeks long that I hung out there and kind of met people that I'd interacted with for the first year of doing this, between the PR folks, the athletes, and all that. They kind of all got to know me through Facebook and Twitter and stuff as this guy that's all of a sudden writing about the sport. And so it's kind of coming full circle. This is my 10th season doing this coming up, and World Championships again are in Lake Placid. Yeah, it's been a lot.
I think it's super awesome what you're doing. And the only reason I brought up the podcasting thing is I'm wondering if, like, now you got an established base and a good niche that you've hit, and, you know, people consume content in multiple ways. Like, I wonder if that might not be something to add to it, but hey, like, do your thing, because it's obviously working. It's funny you mentioned all this. I don't know if you probably met a million different athletes, but there's a local guy from Meridian, Idaho, where I'm from. And we actually played basketball in high school together. His name's Andrew Blaser. And yeah, Andrew Blaser, he went to school with me. I was a year older than him, but we played ball on the same teams and stuff. And then after he was done track and field, he went through college, broke all the records at University of Idaho, all the stuff. And then, I randomly saw him like 2 years ago training for skeleton. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not very popular around here in Idaho, but we all knew who he was because he was a pretty well-established athlete around the state of Idaho. Everybody kind of knew him for his badges that he kind of basically earned, you know, all through his career. And now he's into it. And he's trying to train for this and that. So I'm wondering, maybe you've crossed paths with him. I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah, we've chatted.
That's so crazy. Small world now that I'm thinking about it. It's awesome. But like, that's what opened my eyes to all of this. And so when I was speaking, you know, obviously I was working with a football team here locally in Idaho, came in contact with an individual who got me in contact with you. It's just crazy how small the world is and how there's these connections. But it's interesting because just within the last year and a half or so, I started opening my eyes to the whole like bobsled type thing and like these types of sports. And I'm like, I wonder if I'll ever get somebody from there on my show. I was going to have Andy on my show, so I think I'll get him on there. And now I'm talking to you, and it's super cool how it's all coming full circle. Now, I have a question specifically for you, Ken, in regards to photography.
Sure. Okay?
Photography it's an art, it's a skill, and you're not just born with it. It seems like there's a lot of to get the right photo. Every sport's going to be different. I've talked to a photographer for the Atlanta Falcons who talked about like kind of their skill sets for football, but everything's different. I'm curious for like motorsports and like these sports like bobsledding, whether it be luge, skeleton, whatever. What would you say is like what creates the perfect picture, the perfect photo for the consumer of that content? In those sports specifically?
Oh man, it really depends. So for motorsports, it's funny because I always joke, you know, the race cars are generally going faster than the bobsledders. But if I've got to get a shot of Jimmy Johnson coming off of turn 4 at Martinsville just to have a shot of him, if I miss the shot or I don't like the shot, 20 seconds from then he'll be coming back. You know, bobsled, you miss the shot, it's gone. That is your one shot at it. You know, they'll take 2 runs, but generally you're in 2 different spots. World Championships, you have the luxury of this. They take 4 runs. Luge takes 2 runs still, but really to get a good shot, to say the perfect photo is kind of funny because there's really no great, like perfect photo for everything. You know, I've got some amazing shots from turn 4 at Martinsville. One from the first night race I had for the late models, where Myatt Snyder is basically jumping over the hood of another car, and you see sparks in the whole thing. Have another one from an earlier late model race with Lee Pulliam and Mike Looney, where Pulliam's actually up on the rear fender, up in the air almost, and just sparks coming out. And that was the battle for the lead with 2 laps to go in the race.
Oh wow!
So you know, some of it's just especially in motorsports, a lot of it's being in the right place at the right time. You know, because even at Martinsville is a half-mile track. You know, South Boston Speedway, where I announced, is a 4/10 mile track. You know, but there's only a certain spot you can be. So I always joke, usually the most action happens wherever I'm not. If I'm in turn 3, something's going to happen over in turn 1 all the way across the track, and I can't get to it. But really for like the perfect shot, it's just kind of, if you can get something, it sounds so cliche. If you can get something awesome that happened at an important time in the event, you know, part of the photo is how cool does it look? Part of it is context. And a lot of that context is what makes the photo great. You know, the Myatt Snyder one, it's awesome. You know, almost dirt jumping up over somebody's other car. But it was just a crash during the race. It just looks pretty cool. Yeah, the lead pulley of Mike Looney one, that is for the lead 2 laps ago in the biggest race those guys race. That's their Daytona 500 at that race. That's the biggest race they run all year. That's for $25,000 for the winner. And 2 laps ago, that happened. And Looney, for a little backstory, he's a beloved racer in this region, doesn't race with a lot of money. That car pulled up to practice in an open air trailer, not even like a pull behind regular race car, just an open air race car trailer like they used to do 25, 30 years ago. And he came out and won the whole thing. It's kind of a cool story. But so that battle, to me, that's just a much better photo because it was a cool shot, but something cool happened. And that's,
Right.
and it was an important part of the race. I feel like a lot of times context is really the most important thing.
And to get that context, does that come with the journalism aspect, like the caption
Yes,
of that
yeah.
photo? Okay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if anybody with a camera can go take pictures. Especially nowadays, it's so much easier to go out there with a camera and get some decent shots. The camera does a lot of it for you nowadays. There's a lot more, obviously, technical things you can do. And in Lake Placid, the lighting's all sorts of wonky on the track. And so there's a lot of technical adjustments you make on the camera to try to get the lighting perfect, try to get everything perfect. And then God help you, a cloud comes through and ruins the whole thing. But it's a matter of kind of knowing what you're looking at and really trying to get those shots at those moments are really the important thing. And obviously there's some things you want to do especially in motorsports, how focused do you want the people in the background? I prefer to have a little more blur in my shot just to make the cars look even faster. You see some of these great photos where everything is blurry and then in focus is that one race car, and to me, that's always a really cool looking shot. Some people really don't like that. They just like a crisp everything so you can kind of see the whole thing, the fans, everything else going on in the background. And there's a time and place for that. It just really depends on the situation, I think.
Totally, man. I'm just curious because I've seen a lot of people, a lot of photographers that I've spoken with, just being at games and stuff myself, basketball tournaments, stuff like that. When we've got tons of photographers, they're taking tons of shots. They're taking tons. I mean, I don't even know. I'm talking in the hundreds of shots, if not thousands, sometimes over the course of 2 days, 3 days tournaments.
Oh, absolutely.
Teams. I'm curious. So the caption's super important. Is there a tip or a trick that you use to make sure that you remember what that photo was all about? Do you go back to your car that night, or back to your house, I should say, that night, and pop it into the computer and take notes and be like, okay, this was from this race and this turn and whatever it may be for whichever event you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, if there's certain things that happen, I always carry a notepad and try to make sure, if something important happens, or I started carrying the notepad in part just because I'd run into people that would want a very specific photo of something and I needed an email to send it to. But then, the more I did stuff, it was both there's notes as to what the photo was, where it was, and then sometimes some technical notes about what did I do to get the lighting right, to get the those things right. So I try to take notes where I can. I usually carry a voice recorder with me as well because, I'm, for the Bobsled website, I'm the writer, I'm the photographer, I'm the owner, I'm that's it. It's a one-man show. And so there's, I try to have everything ready. If I need to do an interview, I got the recorder. If I need to just take notes, I've got a pen and paper. So really just attention to detail and just making sure I have, the Pulliam Looney race thing. That's something I will remember because it was, last lap of the last race. You can't really forget that. But there's other stuff, that either that or I've got to go back and try to find somebody's write-up of an event, and I'd rather not spend that much time looking for it. I'd just rather have it all right in front of me.
Totally, man. It's just super cool to get to know you, Ken, and kind of see the inside details of what's going on. And, I'm sitting here thinking, that's a lot of work, man. People don't realize that and you're running your whole, slidingonice.com. That's yours. You're the one-man show. You just said it. There's a lot that goes into it. You're a one-man show. You're a Swiss Army knife, if you will, when it comes to that skill set. I'm curious, and I want to know, what's the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate goal for Ken Childs? What would you like to do in the next 5 years with this website, or what would you like to do with this career? Like, where do we expect to see you?
Man, I'll tell you what, the goal for the website is just to keep doing what I'm doing, try to find ways I can add content here and there. You know, it's the off season right now. It is a boring time to write about bobsledding because there's nothing going on. You know, people aren't even training right now. They're all kind of hanging out. You know, I mean, some people, they're hitting the weight room and stuff, but like the real intensive, you know, track work and stuff like that doesn't really kick off for a couple months. Normally, this is the time a lot of people take their vacations. Obviously, a lot of those are staycations right now.
Right.
But so with that, you know, for me, if I could just keep for the photography stuff, it's really just keep doing what I'm doing. Really for all of it, keep doing what I'm doing. I love what I do. You know, the announcing in South Boston is kind of a dream of mine. That is an old historic NASCAR racetrack, and I get to go to those races, get to talk to the fans about racing, and it's great. The bobsled stuff, if I can just educate fans, if I can get one more set of eyes on a race, then I feel like I'm doing something. You know, there are there's an endless supply of athletes, stories, um, all sorts of stuff that a lot of people, they watch the Olympics. They see bobsledding, they see skeleton, they see luge, and they're like, "Oh, cool, this is a thing." They cheer for their country. You know, NBC, CBC, or whoever will do their stories about, you know, kind of the top athletes and stuff. And that's great. It's great for them to get those stories out there. But man, there's a lot of people that are doing just as much work that won't get a quarter of the screen time, if even. And those people's stories should be out there too. And the more I can do that, and the more I can try to, you know, if I can get some cool photos out there of stuff, if I can get, you know, interviews and stories and stuff, we have got a lot of fun stuff planned for this summer, I hope. As far as some stories and some, I won't say activities, but yeah, a lot of cool stuff we're going to be doing. And it's just if I can do that and get some more eyes on the sport is really what I want. You know, I want athletes to be able to look to sponsors and go, "Hey, look at this is the stuff I'm doing. Here it is on a website. You know, I'd like to plug, you know, my sponsors, and it's one way I could do that." Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that we could maybe do, and I'm trying to just get that for the athletes as best I can. If I don't make a dime doing it, um, my life goal for the website financially is if it can pay for itself one day, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, I work a regular 9 to 5 job, and I'm an IT manager. It's what I do for during the day, the bobsled stuff, the racing stuff, and all that. That's nights and weekends. You know, my weekends are usually spent watching bobsled, skeleton, luge from my couch, from my bed, from somewhere, and writing about it where I am. Basically early mornings, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 10 to 12 weeks a year. And then the rest of the time is kind of prep work and things like that as well. But yeah, the ultimate goal, just if I can get more eyes on the sport, and, you know, with the photography, if I can get just one person to look at it and go, "Oh man, that's cool. I need to go see that in person," or "I need to make sure I catch it on TV." Then that's all I'm shooting for.
I love it, man. I love it. So slidingonice.com, this is Ken Childs, the owner, the creator, the one-man army of slidingonice.com. Go check it out. I'll put it here in the description for the podcast as well. And we're going to do what we can to get eyes on there. I appreciate what you're doing, Ken, as well. I think it's super cool. It's kind of the idea of like my podcast. I try to get people's stories out there. And I think you're kind of in the same boat in regards to the sports that you're covering. You're trying to get their stories, trying to get eyes on it, trying to give people a platform. And I think it's awesome. I respect what you're doing. And I really appreciate you joining the show and letting us hear a little bit more from you. And we really appreciate
Anytime.
your story.
Enjoyed it.
Awesome, guys. Now, once again, this is Ken Childs. Is there anywhere we can follow you? Is there any social media that's attached to that?
Yeah, Twitter's the best place to follow me, at the Ken Childs, because some jerk took Ken Childs years ago. So so the Ken Childs on Twitter. That's me. That's the best place to find me right now. I've got a Flickr page that I link to once in a while on my Twitter. and will be the best place to find all my photos. There's a God knows how many photos out there. If you ever just want to browse through and check them out, the Ken Childs on Flickr, if you want to check that out, and that's where all the pictures are. I try to keep that pretty updated, but over a race weekend, I'll take 3,000 photos. So it takes a while to get them all up there. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. V Ken Childs, correct?
Yep.
Awesome. We'll follow you there. I'll put it in the description here as well. And once again, we appreciate you tuning in. And you guys know the drill. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Give me 5 stars and subscribe so that we can bring you more content. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Guys, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Game Time Guru podcast with Ken Childs. If you guys enjoyed the episode, share it with your friends and family and anyone who's a fan of the sport of bobsledding and motocross and everything that Ken talked about today. Make sure to head on over to iTunes, leave me a 5-star review, and we'll talk to you guys next time.